out in a few days, so keep your eyes open. Because one person that wasn't happy about that so-called Transform Baltimore and getting them hands on that money, and since they're setting up the money going through another quasi-public-private partnership, the Maryland Stadium Authority, they know that the big jabroni, Andre Alonso, was not too happy about that. But in the meantime, back at the ranch here. So you have now Alexis Hughes, who's a spokeswoman for the Speaker, Michael Bush office. And she probably tell me she running more things down there than some of them so-called whips, some of them whips and deputy whips, man. Them whips and deputy whips down there in Annapolis. Alexis Hughes. Let's go on. It says, Miller and Bush said in a news release that they approve of the Public Safety Secretary Gary Maynard's decision to seek a federal investigation of gang activities at the detention center. But they said the legislators must ask tough questions about the conditions that led to the allegations. Well, why you want it to take place in June? Why wouldn't you want it to take place soon as opposed to June, unless you're trying to line up your T's, your I's, your O's, and everything else? Unless you're trying to line up your lies, and then they spin what they want to get to the media through Alexis Hughes and others that will spoon feed the information to the Sun paper and the Washington Post. If you don't see this picture, let me paint this picture for you here. But it goes on and says, now, again, we need to take a broader look at the policies governing the correction system, including hiring and training and disciplinary process and efforts to combat gang violence. The House hearing had been announced in the aftermath of last week's announcement of the federal indictment of 25 people, including 13 correctional officers, and what was described by the prosecutors as a pervasive corruption scheme involving guards and inmate members of the Black Guerrilla family. Hughes said Miller and Bush decided it would be better for the House and Senate to hold a joint inquiry into the problems reported at the facility. Well, why stop the House Judiciary Committee from having their hearings, when if you still wanted to have hearings, you could have hearings in June. There should be hearings next week and hearings the following week, and the following month. Remember, they had two special sessions, man. 2 special sessions to raise your taxes. So you would think they would be willing to have a special session to get to the bottom of all this corruption. But let's keep going here, man. Goes on and says, the legislative panel is in effect here. Hughes said Miller and Bush decided it would be better for the House and Senate to hold a joint inquiry into the problems reported at the facility, including rampant smuggling and sexual liaisons between male and female correction officers and, again, inmates. Goes on and says the legislative policy panel is in effect a super committee chaired by the 2 presiding officers and made up of senior members of both parties and the 2 houses, including the chairs of all standing committees. Miller and Bush said that after the briefing, they will name a joint task force to oversee the Public Safety Department's efforts to correct problems and to help develop remedies to be considered in the 2014 legislative session. Meanwhile, police said a man who was charged in the indictment but couldn't be found during the initial raids has been arrested. Court records show that Tyrone Thompson, 36, accused in the gang indictments of being an outside supplier, was taken into custody Thursday. Thompson supplied alleged gang kingpin Tavon White with prescription pills through intermediaries. Federal investigators wrote in an affidavit in the case. Thompson could not be reached for comment, and no attorney is listed for him in court records. So let me quickly go to this piece. I believe this is courtesy of WBAL yesterday, if not this morning, talking about lawmakers canceled the hearing. So you would think your lawmakers would give their fellow lawmakers who are on the House Judiciary Committee the same amount of respect that they want to give these others that they claim are in senior and leadership positions, except they want to pick and choose who they want to be on the committee, pick and choose who they want to speak to the media, so they can clearly clamp down and put a lid on this fire and contain this fire so that you and your family really don't have justice regarding, again, what's been going on in these institutions, and only trying to confine it, as I said before, to central booking in the Baltimore Detention Center. Let me go to this clip, and then what I'll do, before I go a little deep into the show this afternoon, I'll open up the lines and take your thoughts, questions, comments on this information regarding that before I get into Assata Shakur. And then I'm going to get into the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan appearance on the Rock Newman show last week. And this article on the front page of the Final Call talking about the showdown and showtime as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam has faced these false charges of hate and mischaracterizations against the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, again, by the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ADL, and major Jewish organizations. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan now is calling them out for the showdown that's about to go down. I'll get into that shortly on the State of the City because we're on till 2. But let me go to this clip courtesy, I believe, of WBAL talking about lawmakers cancel hearing into the Baltimore City Jail. But let's get it clear. It's the governor that wants to cancel these hearings. It's the attorney general that wants to cancel these hearings. That's Doug Gansler, of course. It's Doug Gansler, of course, the schmuck. It's Senate President Mike Miller that wants to cancel these hearings. It's Speaker Mike Bush. So the real gangsters, as you see, in the words of Tupac Shakur, M.O.B., baby, money over britches, money over britches. So you see the real gangsters are Miller, O'Malley, and Bush, M.O.B. down there in Annapolis, man. Not the Black Guerrilla family, not the Bloods, not the Crips, not any of these other families and organizations that they want to tell you about, but the real gangsters, man. The real mob, Miller, O'Malley, and Bush, is what are the ones that are really trying to stop this and trying, of course, throw all types of roadblocks, stumbling blocks in the way of those that really want questions and answers regarding what's been going on in the Maryland corruption centers, which are supposed to be correction centers. But let me go to this clip and then we'll open up the lines, take your thoughts, questions, comments.
We have a zero tolerance policy towards corruption of any kind.
Governor Martin O'Malley is publicly encouraging a relentless internal investigation into city jail corruption. But in private meetings with legislators, one of his top aides is discouraging lawmakers from holding a legislative inquiry on the issue. The House Judiciary and Appropriations Committees want to call Corrections Secretary Gary Maynard as the star witness.
Find out more about what Mr. Maynard, Secretary Maynard knew, when he knew it, and whether or not he acted on it in an appropriate fashion.
On Wednesday, Stacey Mayer, the governor's chief legislative aide, showed up for a meeting between 6 House Judiciary Committee members and Secretary Maynard. According to 3 people who were in the room, she asked, "What's the point of having these hearings? Don't you think it might be too soon? Secretary Maynard doesn't have the results of employee interviews yet. Secretary Maynard can't comment on the case itself."
How damaging is even the perception the administration doesn't believe the timing of a public inquiry is right?
Well, it's extremely damaging because the time is right to have a public inquiry. There needs to be complete transparency.
The legislative inquiry was called in response to a federal indictment unsealed last week, alleging that the Black Guerrilla family gang controlled the city jail complex. 25 people have been indicted for assisting inmates in a criminal enterprise inside the jail. That included smuggling cell phones into the facility. One security expert believes a legislative hearing, even in this early stage of the case, is necessary.
The public need to feel safe. The public need to know that the individuals who are smuggling phones and contraband inside the compound have not used that to cause problems outside the compound.
Frederick and Washington County Republican delegate Michael Huff was one of the committee members who heard Stacey Mayer's pitch. Reached by phone, he says he agrees with her. "I don't see the purpose of holding a hearing now when the corrections secretary can't provide the answers. We should give him a couple of weeks so he can finish the internal investigation. Then his testimony will be more worthwhile."
They can ask general questions that make the public feel safe, but also let the public know that they have a vested interest in helping with this case internally and externally.
Welcome back, welcome back. Let me do this. Let me open up the lines. Take your thoughts, questions, comments on this matter once again. But clearly, they all should be charged with obstruction of justice. Anybody who does not want a hearing, from the governor to the Senate president to Speaker of the House Michael Bush to many others, should be charged. I'm saying in this day, in this time, in this hour, this minute, this second, they all should be charged with obstruction of justice if they do not want lawmakers. These are lawmakers. O'Malley is the executive branch, not the legislative branch. And he damn sure is not the judicial branch. And if Miller and Bush and Huff and others' job is to block for O'Malley, then they have to go. You're talking about the longest serving Senate president in the history of any state in Mike Miller. You're talking about the longest serving Speaker of the House of any Speaker of any House in any state in the country in Michael Bush. So these are the real gangsters. And I'm glad you get an opportunity to see this. But let me open up the lines. Take your thoughts. Maybe you don't care. Maybe some of you go in and out of them institutions. Some of you got loved ones in them institutions, and that's all of us. That's all of us. I know you can mess it up, dress it up, try to press it up, but that's all of us. If you're a Muslim, you got relatives in that institution. If you Moorish science, and why I'm talking about the Moorish science, some of you that don't like the fact that Brother Muhammad and the Moorish science brothers came together, if you got something you want to say to Brother Muhammad and the Moorish science, call in when I have my brothers on the air. Don't try to backbite. Say to the brothers, Brother Muhammad talking about you. Be a man or be a woman, damn it. But if you got Christian organizations that go in and out of the prison, you got youth organizations going outside them prisons, women organizations going outside of them prisons, then your loved one life could be snuffed out because your governor who signed the death penalty repeal bill don't want to deal with the conditions that create death inside of all of the institutions. But let me open up the lines. Take your thoughts, questions, comments, 410-761-1592 before I get into the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and Assata Shakur today. But you can get in on the conversation if you like. And this is what we're talking about, nothing more. We'll save all them other stories for later on. But you got state lawmakers that don't want, again, the Maryland House Judiciary Committee to have hearings next week. So they clearly want this to go away, man. And don't want you and your family and your loved ones to have justice around the corruption that's going on, and don't want this Secretary Maynard to be questioned when he has a right to be questioned. Who does he work for? He work for us, does he work for them? Let me come to the line. Take your thoughts, questions, comments, 410. Looking at these smooth criminals down there. Smooth criminals is what we're looking at. Miller, O'Malley, and Bush. MOBs, man. The real MOBs, the real dead men walking, the real Bloods, the real Crips, the real white guerrilla family is what we're looking at down there in Annapolis. Let me come to the line. Good afternoon, caller. You in the state of the city.
Good afternoon, Brother Muhammad. The brother's name you're trying to think of early is Ernie Davis.
Ernie Davis, yeah.
Ernie Davis.
Thank you very much. Yes, right. Sir.
But this governor, who I completely don't understand, is his plantation mentality. Now, he finds the no death penalty thing. Okay, great.
Right.
But he won't parole nobody.
He won't parole or pardon anybody.
He's been there for 6 years.
Yes, sir.
Somebody dead death for somebody. Come on now.
Right. That's right, brother.
So in other words, you're just gonna be warehoused.
That's all.
You're a slave.
Right. It's clearly, brother. Yes, sir.
He can't find nobody.
Right. And Ben Jealous and the NAACP couldn't press him on that, man.
Oh, no, they ain't going to say nothing now.
Co-signing for him, brother.
The big fat senator to say something. They ain't going to say nothing now.
Yes,
Come
sir.
on now.
Thoughts on them covering up this prison story, brother? Don't want no hearings, man.
Well, and I think Maryland might have one of the biggest prison populations there is.
And growing, brother. And growing as we speak right now. Yes, sir.
And growing. Thank you, Brother Mark.
All right, brother. Appreciate your call. And with that, we'll take more of your calls, 410-761-1592. But your governor, your president of the Senate, Mike Miller and Michael Bush, they don't want no hearings. And whatever hearings they do have, they want to pick and choose who they want to ask questions, and it'll just be scripted. It'll just be scripted is what they want, man. And they don't want this to go up the ladder, as I said before. With that, let me come back to the lines. Take your thoughts, questions, comments. You black women is getting ready to celebrate Mother's Day. But your men are behind bars. You know you ought to have something to say. You brown women, red women, yellow women, poor white women, you ought to have something to say. Because your loved one could be next to die in the jail or die on some bus choked out on his way to court because you had some correctional officer that took a bribe, took a payment to give them the keys so that they could unshackle a prisoner to go and snuff out the life of another prisoner. But let me come to the lines. Well, maybe you don't care. Maybe you really just don't care. Maybe that's what it is. It's a sunny day, Brother Muhammad. I don't want to talk about prisons. You better talk about one because you could be in one. You could be in one. Dad, let me come to the line, 410-761-1592. Good afternoon, caller. You on the state of the city.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for bringing this effort up when people have just let it die down.
Yes, ma'am.
But as we saw the latest news, we saw about with the correctional that is in Woodlawn.
That's right.
Which shows it's much further than Baltimore City. And then, of course, finally the award for 2006 was just small in scale, and then and they just put a cap on that, trying to say, well, we don't want any other cases to come forward trying to bring suit. If it had been another state, such as Illinois, you definitely believe he would have had to step down.
That's right.
Bush and O'Malley on that.
That's right.
And with your comment about with Etan Thomas, I know Etan very well.
Yes.
He stood very strongly for us, for Mumia Abu Jamal.
Right.
Did a play, put him in a book. Another thing that happened